So let me read to you. When I used to live in India, my apartment was located at the end of a dirt road in a neighborhood known as Majestic Colony. Every time I needed to go somewhere or get something, I had to walk 150 yards down this road and turn left towards the markets and stores. Halfway along the journey, the road became paved, but the area was still extremely poor. On both sides of the street were houses, shacks, slums, and structures inhabited by families struggling to stay alive. There were piles of trash and waste swept to the side of the street. The area looked devastated, the way you'd imagine a street would look after a war. It was a pretty cheerless and dismal street, a stark example of the urban residential poverty and disparity of India. If it weren't for the little children playing blissfully along the road, it could have been a very depressing sight. One small child there, Debbie, had since become a dear lifelong friend. I would usually make a point to look for her if she didn't find me first. Debbie had big, gorgeous brown eyes, long eyelashes, long, stringy black hair, and high cheekbones. And she was missing one of her left front tooth. Anybody else? She had to be the cutest kid on the block. Debbie's family was wonderful. She was the youngest of 5 daughters. Both their parents worked very hard. Their father was a construction worker, and their mother made and sold long strings of jasmine flowers that women wear in their hair. Their home was a little thatch-roofed shanty constructed in the 7 feet between 2 old, dilapidated brick houses. It was where they ate, slept, cooked their food, did their homework, played their games, and prayed before their statue of Ganesh, and that is the elephant-headed god of prosperity. They became sort of a family to me. Occasionally I would stop in the evenings to share a cup of tea with their father, trying to fumble through his limited English and even more of my limited Tamil. I would play jacks with the girls or look at a little book of the family photos that they cherished among their most prized possessions. Their little home in the slums had been a refuge for me in many times of frustration. There was one night that I'll never forget. It was dark. They did not have electricity in their home, even when my power was on. So they depended on the street lights for some of their light. They had 2 small candles burning, casting a dim golden light on the dirty walls and dirt floor. They sat me down on the only stool in the place, and we tried to talk. A little Tamil here, a little English there, and we knew more or less that everyone was okay and doing well. Then the girls invited me to stay for dinner. So many times I had walked by and had asked, "Sapti la, have you eaten?" And just as many times as they invited me to join them for lunch or dinner, every time I declined. It wasn't that I didn't want to eat with them, it was that I always felt they needed all the food they had. And sharing with me would only mean that they would go without. This time, however, I felt that I needed to stay. I helped Maya and Padma cook. There wasn't much that I could help with. They had a few worn-out metal vessels to cook dinner in an open fire in the corner. First, they cooked a big pot of plain rice, and then they started on the curry. Since I was there, they wanted to give me the best. So Granny, one of their daughters, ran to the store to get a few eggs. There wasn't a lot of food, but it took an hour to prepare the meal. When it was ready, we sat cross-legged on the dirt floor, and Maya served us. We each received a few spoons of plain rice, and then a very small portion of egg curry to mix in with the rice. My heart broke as she served us. The girls hardly had anything for themselves, yet they were so happy to share with me. We sat together barefoot, eating with our hands, happy and content. It was a priceless communion that satisfied my soul. When everyone had eaten, we sat around and listened to some soft Tamil music on an old, beat-up transistor radio. It was perfect. The later it got, the more sleepy we all became, and said it was time to lay the girls down to sleep. I said goodnight and walked back to the gate into Majestic Colony, back to my home. A deep sadness accompanied me home. That night, I laid down on my own mattress on the floor, and with a candle burning beside me, said a prayer for my little friends. My friends who work harder than, but eat less than, anyone I know. My friends who give so much, but get so very little. My friends who seem to have so much joy, despite their poverty. My friends who were sleeping on the ground, and who were probably still hungry. So I know many of us are having big plans this Christmas, and you may be stressing out on what the house is going to look like. If you're like me, you're worried about the yard, the car, how it's going to appear, how we're going to look. When I read this story, it took me down to reality and made me realize that Christ came to serve the poor. And he didn't bring them to his community, he went to their community to serve them where they were. And that's where he is found. So I hope you enjoyed the story as much as we did, and wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thank you.